Hey guys, Smitty here. Thanks for tuning in and welcome back. Apologies for those of you who follow my channel more closely. I was out of town for a couple of weeks, so unfortunately the content went on pause, but we are back at it with a new build to walk through. And so some of you may have seen my recent Snowy Mountain Inn cinematic where we got a little artsy fartsy with the showcase, but today we're going to give a little more of a deep dive into the details, hopefully inspire some of the other builds out there and give you some ideas. So without further ado, grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's get right into it. Alright, so as always, we will start first with the exteriors. Again, the overall idea for this build was kind of a snowy mountain inn. So a place where people could come in and, rest their cold, weary bodies from maybe a long day of working in the mountains or in the mines or something like that. It is kind of a medium to large building that we have here. And if we just take a look at the overall shape, so even from like the roof and at its foundation, it's really just basically a square that we've split off with different faces in each direction. But it's not an overly complicated shape at its base. We just kind of added some different flair with the different balconies and things like that. So if we just go in the front, we obviously have this front kind of porch area, and I implemented some additional shapes with these circular fire warming areas on each side, and then we also mirrored some symmetrical balconies on the top, which I really like. Have a nice little stairway, and then also this, I wanted to, since this build was supposed to be a place of refuge, I figured there has to be some kind of warming place on the outside. So that's where I incorporated this fire pit here. It's obviously just the wood beams with some of the single block wood stones that just kind of decorate the outside. And then I used the large bonfire, but what I actually did was I actually sunk it down just beneath the ground just a little bit. And that's because I feel like when I put it level to the ground, it's just so large. And it just didn't quite match the look I wanted, so I thought it would look a little better sunken down, and so I'm really happy with how that turned out. I think it makes a little more sense too. With a fire this big, maybe for like safety reasons, you'd have it a little bit lower. We have some nice circling benches, and then just maybe a sheltering wall around it that would maybe trap in the heat. Taking a little closer look at the sides here. So these are some of the additional balconies that we tried to incorporate. Just to give some additional shapes. So like I said, it's really just a square structure, but we wanted to maybe add some curvature, something that looks a little bit more interesting along the sides. And so if we take a little bit closer look at how we created the sides, you'll see that there is a bit of layering that happens. So when I build walls, I want to make sure that I'm not just making them flat and boring. And so you kind of have this kind of recessed effect that happens. So as you can see, it starts with stone at the base, and there's a short wall, and then logs. But on top of that, I basically line it with an additional barrier of beams, and then some other logs and some of those cross beams. And what that does is give this kind of recessed effect, which adds a bit of like depth and relief to the wall, which looks quite nice in my opinion. So as you see, we follow this kind of this balcony pattern all the way around some of these corner areas. We also have some of these hanging lights off on the corners, which I think is nice. It just adds some additional flair to the sides, makes it look a little more interesting. I like how we incorporated that. We take a look at the roofs more specifically. I like how we kind of ridged the top here, which kind of led up into the dragon head, and then we hung the lights underneath it. I think that was a really nice effect. And then we kind of have these star top pieces, which are a nice little cap to the roof. And I love just how like the geometry of the roof worked out with, it is a square in its basic shape, but we have, obviously from the center we have 4 different faces coming out, which I think just looked really cool. And then the overall geometry we have, where it kind of gradually gets more steep, I just think looks really nice for this kind of like mountain lodge inn cabin feel. As you can see, we still have the recessed walls all the way around, give some nice depth and texture to it. I mean, just a kind of a nice back seating area where you can look into the forest and see nature and things like that. Another thing I really like is just location-wise for where we chose. We're right on the edge of the Black Forest here, and in doing so, the trees aren't actually fully covered in snow, like you would see maybe further up the mountain. And so I kind of like that because it gives a little bit of a warmer feel to the area, even though we're in the snow. It doesn't feel like we're just kind of in the cruel mountain environment way up high. So I definitely like the decision building here. If we go on over to this side, again, it's more of the balconies. And these balconies are basically, it's access to the outside for some of the rooms that we have in the inn. This is where the chimney is for the fire that we have inside. But yeah, again, I'm really happy with how that pattern kind of just worked out all the way around. I think it just looks really interesting. It adds a nice amount of relief and some flair to make it look nice, just not make it look flat. And really pleased with how that worked out, just with the at each level. So now, if we go ahead and take a look on the inside, this is where we really just went for a super cozy feel. Again, it's an inn. It's a refuge from the snow. I had to, really make sure that it felt warm when you walked in here. Obviously, all the wood definitely helps. But if we look over here to the left, this is where we have more of the bar area. And this is where I really just went crazy with a lot of the different item placements. And so this is the first time I really experimented with placing different meads and things like that. And they look so cool. I mean, I didn't realize that they had this glowing effect. And this could probably be leveraged or utilized in other decorative ways than even just having mead. But I just love the way that it really makes the bar pop and just draws your eyes to it. And so we have some shelves with some of them stacked over here. And then I also learned that you can actually place meat as long as it's cooked. And some of you guys may have known this. I didn't, and I think it's because I tried to place meat, like different meats at one time, and they must have not been cooked, and I wasn't able to. So I thought maybe you just couldn't place meats, but as long as they're cooked, it looks like you can place them, and so that's just a nice option of food to lay out, right? I mean, we're Vikings, right? We like our meats. Some other sitting area, just some storage, things like that. Yeah, just really happy with how this bar area worked out. This is obviously a cooking space, and instead of, I couldn't really just fit a full-on fire here for the design. So I went with 3 just sconces that are kind of behind this wood wall and hidden, but still gives the feel that it's a cooking area. So although it's probably not, it's obviously not practical or functional or anything like that, it's more of a design decision. I think it still looks nice. It at least gives the effect of, this is where we would cook. On the other side, this is the real cozy spot with the fire and the hearth. So it's a, 2 hearth wide fireplace. And then it's also the area where I put this giant feast table. So it's 2 tables wide. I wanted to make it a little more grand than just having it 1 table wide and long. And then I just jam-packed it full of a bunch of different foods, right? So this is where you could just feast with a bunch of different Vikings and be merry and, rest after a hard day's work in the mountain. But I just love how just like jamming all this food in here. I would love to sit here and pig out, right? But I love how cozy this area worked. Maybe just a smaller table over here, and then some other smaller sitting sections over there as well. So over here is the pantry, and so this is just where we store all our foods, some different like berries, things like that. And I don't know, I just like the way things look when you have just like a stockpile of them sitting out like that, right? Like, it just seems practical. I feel like any place, like a tavern or an inn or something like that, would just have some sort of storage place where they'd keep all their foods and supplies, right? It's particularly in a harsh environment like the mountain, right? You never know when you're gonna get another supply run in. So we have symmetrical stairs on each side, which will bring you up to the rooms, just nicely labeled. We have 4 rooms in total, so it's not huge, but if people want to, spend the night, there are a couple rooms available. So they're not overly decorated. It's kind of just a bare minimum. We'll have a little workbench and just some places where you can put your gear. But again, just an area you can spend the night, rest up for your next day of work or your next adventure on the mountain. And then it's just the same over on this side. And then this is also where you would have access to the balconies, just over on this in the front, where you can look over, see the front, and kind of look down on that fire pit down there as well. All right, and there you guys have it. So that is the Snowy Mountain Inn. Real cozy build. It took a lot of time because, like I said, with a lot of my walls and things like that, I do a bit of like a layering effect. So it's not just one wall. I end up doing like 3 walls because I do the outside, there's the core wall, and then I also do it on the inside as well, just to give a little bit more depth. But had a ton of fun building this one. I love building in the mountain. It's probably my favorite biome to build in because Valheim just has such a cozy feel with how you can furnish some of the insides of these. And so again, I love the contrast of the cozy inside with the cold of the mountain. I just think it works super well. But hopefully I can give you guys some ideas or inspire you guys for some other builds out there. There's some really great Valheim builders, and I love being a part of this community. There's just some real talented people out there. But if you guys are enjoying the videos, please make sure you like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks.